General Accounting is a startup company that makes personal finance software for budget planning and tax calculations. They purchased data of thousands of potential customers for their product. The data had the following information: name, birth year, phone number, email address, educational level, as no college, some college, or bachelor's degree, and lastly, yearly income. For each item, right, whether it's qualitative nominal, uh, qualitative no, ordinal, quantitative interval, or quantitative ratio. Now, the first thing that you have to be able to distinguish is qualitative versus quantitative. You say quantitative if first it's a number, but just being a number is not enough. It has to have a meaning. So the numbers should have a meaning. In other words, bigger numbers should correspond to something being big, smaller numbers should correspond to something being small. Okay, so let's go through each one of these and figure out whether it's qualitative or quantitative. Name, this would be, uh, this is not a number, so this would be definitely qualitative. Birth year is a number, and of course, if the number is big, then the person is born recently. If the number is small, that means this person is older, so the number definitely has a meaning. Now, phone numbers, these are numbers, but this is where it gets tricky. This one, although it's a number, it's not a quantitative information because the numbers themselves don't correspond to something big being big or small. So this would be just a qualitative information rather than quantitative. Okay, email address, not a number. Sometimes it contains some numbers, but it has non-letters and non-numbers, has some letters. So definitely qualitative. Education level, it's in these ways, so these won't be numbers. Therefore, education level would be qualitative. Now, in some cases, education level could be written in terms of years in school or years in post high school education. And if that's how the education level is recorded, then that's a number, and the numbers do have a meaning. So in that case, the education level could be quantitative rather than qualitative. But at least for this sort of data, it must be qualitative. Yearly income, of course, it's a number, and it's obviously quantitative. Now, for each of the qualitative information, let's look at whether it's qualitative nominal, which means that there is no degree between some ordering between different objects, or qualitative ordinal, where it says it can be ordered. So the only qualitative ordinal would be education level, because no college, some college, bachelor's degree can be ordered in terms of degree of education. So no college would be having less education than the bachelor's degree. So there is an order going from here to there. So education level will be qualitative ordinal. All the other qualitative information would be qualitative nominal. So let's write down. So this would be, I'll just write here, okay? So this would be just number 5, whereas number 1, number 3, and 4 would be qualitative nominal. Now let's now look at the quantitative information. There are two types: quantitative interval and quantitative ratio. And the quantitative interval is the one that makes a lot of people confused. You say that an information is quantitative interval if only the difference makes sense and the zero doesn't make sense. So that the ratio between two quantities don't make sense. So here's an example: yearly income. The zero makes sense, right? If somebody doesn't work at all, then that person's yearly income will be 0. So there's a natural zero there. In such a case, ratios do have meaning because you can say, I make double of your salary, right? The ratio of twice of something makes sense. So this would be an example of quantitative ratio. On the other hand, think about the birth year. Now, what is the 0th year in the birth year? Well, that's 0 AD, which is some arbitrary number. People just picked a year near Jesus' birthday, so we just have an arbitrary 0th year, and therefore a person born in year 2000 cannot talk about another year, another historical person born in year 1000 and say, oh, I am twice in years as you. It doesn't make sense. Ages have ratio meaning, right? You can say I'm twice as old as you. That makes sense. But when it comes to birth year, what year you were born, ratios don't make sense. You can only say, you can only talk about the difference between two birth years. You can say, oh, I was born 2 years ahead of you. So that's a difference between the birth years. So in such a case, if there's no natural zero, so that ratios don't make sense, only the differences make sense, then we call such a case as quantitative interval. So quantitative interval would be birth year, whereas the other quantitative information, which is the yearly income, would be quantitative ratio. Okay. Now let's read on. The company wants to decide the adequate price for the software product they made, so they chose 20 people by using a random number generating computer script. What type of sampling is this? So what they're trying to do is, out of thousands of customer data, they can't possibly call everybody and get their opinions. They just want a sample of 20 people. Okay. And to do that, they're using a random number generator. And anytime a random number generator is associated, this is what we call simple random sample. Now, you should remember all the other types of sampling. So other types of sampling are, so there's a cluster sample. So this will be when you take the customer list and look up just one region and take everybody there. Now, sometimes it's good enough. Sometimes people do it because it's more convenient, but there are times when cluster sampling cannot guarantee that you get a good representative sample of the entire population. Stratified sampling. That would be like when you want to take your sample to have the right proportion of men and women, different age groups, different education groups, and stuff like that. If you have like different kind of groups within your population, you want your sample to have similar ratios in the as the population. That's stratified. Systematic would be systematic sample would be if the company takes the phone list and calls every 100th person, and somehow that gives you 20 people. That would be systematic sampling. Yeah, I think it should be sampling. Yeah. And then there's also the convenience sampling, which is you just do whatever that's easiest. So convenience sampling is, you don't really care about whether your sample is going to be a good representation. You just want some sample. So this will be when you take the survey to out in the street and just ask people that you meet, or you make a website and just take a poll there. Like things that are easy to get, but often the convenience sample would not give you a good representation of the population. So you should really be careful when your sample comes from a convenience sampling. Okay, so you should definitely know these different ways of sampling and what it means, because for exams and quizzes you might have different kinds. But the answer for this one would be simple random sampling.